Hey everybody, I know I look a bit rough. I have an autoimmune disease, a chronic condition, and it can get really tough at times. I'm going to start this video on a serious note because I just want to give a shout out to anyone who's going through something, carrying a burden, whether it's chronic illness, whether it's depression, whatever that thing is. I know how hard it is to stay positive, and I know sometimes it feels like no one in the world can understand you. Like you have this burden to carry and that it's yours alone, but the truth is it's not. And there's many other people that may feel the same way or that you can connect with, and that there's better days ahead, and just to stay positive. It's really, really hard to do. I'm not saying it's easy, but I just want to give a shout out to everyone who's going through something. Okay, now on to a positive note. So this video is going to be on a great martial art. In fact, I think this is one of the martial arts that I looked at, I analyzed, and I fell in love with really, really quick. And this style is Mongolian wrestling. Now, I'm going to take some kind of personal element here because I'm like 25% Hungarian, and Genghis Khan settled in Hungary. And I believe in my head, for whatever reason, that Hungarians are part Mongolian. So I'm taking credit for this entire system.
Pow, pow, inside fighting, yeah, dangerous martial arts. Pow, pow, ooh, ah.
Mongolian wrestling. Let's just look at some of what makes it unique. Well, one of the things that's really special about this style is just how old it is. You know, from what I could find, people say it dates back up to 7,000 years, which is absolutely crazy for a style of martial arts. Let's just play some stuff in the back here. Okay, now, one of the things, these guys, first of all, they're all giant. Mongolians are just giant beasts of men, and they look so strong and powerful. There's another kind of visible influence because I noticed a lot of people in Russia, they tend to have certain features that are Mongolian. So I want to talk about a few things about this style. Number one, the garb. You'll find two different styles. I found two different styles. They call it Boke, but there's pretty much Mongolian wrestling. Mongolian wrestling covers many, many different styles, but what's developed over the years is something called the Nadam festival. And they wear a different garb than this, but it depends on which Nadam festival it is. There's the National Nadam Festival. That pretty much just is a celebration of Mongolian culture where they do this wrestling. But they all wear something that allows you to grip at two different points. Grip at like the shoulder arm area and grip at the waist belt area. So the garb, regardless of how it looks, has those gripping locations, and the style is heavily built up on that. Now, I mean, you'll see these guys are beasts right off the bat. You could see how hard they're taking each other down and how effective they are. And that was just nuts. And how they whip each other. That, by the way, that whip right there, let me just go back. So what you see coming up right here, that whipping that guy in the back, I've seen that in Shuai Jiao because they also grip at the sleeve, right? When you have a sleeve grip, you can do that. And I've even seen, oddly enough, a guy in Ashihara grip at the gi at that location and whip people around. It's something as a jiu-jitsu guy, and even someone who's done judo, I've never done that. So here's where this style is different than other grappling styles. Number one, and I hope you're enjoying this background footage. Number one, they tend to typically fight on just grass, on soil. They don't use mats. They don't use protective gear. They just go onto the grass and wrestle. And I know here you're not seeing that, but historically what's really interesting is, like I said, this dates back 7,000 years, but at the time there were numerous folk styles of wrestling. It took Genghis Khan to unify, and this is just what I read. If I'm wrong, someone in the comments can correct me, but it took Genghis Khan to unify the system because he made his army train Mongolian wrestling in order to keep them conditioned, confident, and strong. And if you look, I think a lot of military styles are rooted in wrestling. It just seems to be the higher up warrior class of fighting. You look at striking, it's more popular sometimes in an area, but wrestling tends to be what the military adopts. When you really look at like these ancient fighters, because I know that was a thing with Shuai Jiao too. And again, there he has that really nice grip on just one side of the body and can whip the guy around. The other thing that's really, really fascinating here is that they don't have time limits. So fights can go on as long as they go on. There's no like stalling to win. You can't do that. There is no stall because there is no end of the fight. The fight ends when you take the guy down to the ground. And the other thing that's huge about this system is no weight classes. We're going back to UFC 1 through 5 here with no weight classes. So, and I like their logic for that because the truth is, if you do get into a war, if you do get into a fight, you don't know the size of the person you're going to have to fight. Weight classes are a result of competition. They're not a result of reality. Reality is that there are no weight classes. So those three rules, if you look at them, are real street or combat oriented rules more than sport oriented rules. No time limits reflects reality. Soil reflects reality. And then again, no weight classes affects reality. So there's things in this system right off the bat that make it completely different than a lot of other wrestling styles out there. And here's where these guys shine, because I hope you've been watching how they're wrestling while I talk. They shine at upper body control and sweeps. You'll see they're incredibly effective at sweeps and about rotational takedowns. And those are two incredibly incredibly effective approaches to combat-based takedowns. You look at freestyle wrestling, a lot of the time your knees touching the ground. I've always advocated for Greco-Roman over freestyle if someone wants to learn self-defense. But here you're really getting a nice sweeping kind of approach. Like I'm going to put on a new video here, and this is really cool. These are sumo against Mongolian wrestlers. And I found out that a lot of the best sumo for the past long period of time have been Mongolians. And so there's a connection there. And if you actually think about the style, it's pretty much suited to become a good sumo wrestler. It's suited to transition well. Because number one, you can see already these skinny Mongolians are used to fighting above their weight class. They're used to fighting guys bigger. They're used to having stamina because they have no time limits. And here you can see they're on soil, which is very Mongolian. And although they lose the shoulder and sleeve grip, what they do get very, very, very clean is the belt grip. And they're incredibly effective at using belt grips. So this is just very cool to see. It's cool to see, number one, that they transition out of their style and that they're willing to train with other people. It's very cool to see that it's adaptable. What I also noticed about Mongolian wrestling, which I'll point out right now that we're looking at, is broken posture, which you don't see in gi styles as much. Now, I consider Mongolian wrestling almost like a half gi style because it has grips. It has grips outside of the overhooks, underhooks. It has that sleeve grip. It has the belt grip. But they still, because of those grips, seem to reach for the belt and get into what you see more in kind of no-gi wrestling styles, which is two guys leaning into each other, like we see here. Not upright posture, which is a very judo thing, but a broken leaning posture. So that was just something I took note of in the style. Let's just look here. Beautiful takedown. Beautiful. And again, I want to make a note here. People do not realize how much weight classes make a difference. You know, if you're a 165-pound guy fighting a 225-pound guy, you have to be measurably better than them. Not slightly better, but let's go to the next video. Measurably better. This one's fast. Okay, so that was beautiful. You could see the speed, the intensity. What I saw there that was different than I've seen in any other Mongolian wrestling video, and I actually researched it, was that they were using collar ties. They were grabbing the neck to control aggressively. And I found out that that's actually disrespectful in Mongolian wrestling and certain styles of it. And so what he was doing there was something I just didn't see as much, these cross collar or collar ties like that you'd see in more traditional wrestling. I didn't see that in a lot of the Mongolian wrestling. But again, they have those other grips. So why would they rely on the neck when they could just grab your sleeve or grab you by the shoulder like that? Here's a great competition. These are just highlights from like the 2022 Nadam, National Nadam Festival. And you'll see the garb is different, right? We saw the garb before, which almost looked like more ancient and traditional. And this looks more like it's made for sport. Looks like it's made out of a cheaper material. And they've got, you know, the smaller underwear belt thing on, but it's not like one solid piece. And they do wear these hats. They always put on these hats and then put their hands up like this. I don't know the significance or if there is significance, but here we'll look at the effectiveness of the style. Again, rotational energy, broken posture, beautiful foot sweeps, beautiful trips. So that seems to be the fundamental aspect of the system that makes it different than other wrestling systems I've seen. This guy's just an absolute monster. You can just see their bodies. They're built different than a lot of other people in the world. But again, they heavily rely on those foot sweeps with the upper body grips. One thing I've personally gotten really into for myself is, in fact, those kind of takedowns, what I call non-committal takedowns. So if I shoot a double leg on someone and they sprawl, I'm risking sacrificing position and sacrificing being on my feet for taking them down. Now, you see this a lot in MMA because the consequences are not the same as reality. In reality, if I double leg you and you end up on top of me sprawling, then I'm in a lot of trouble. Number one, if I double leg on concrete, my knees are probably hitting the ground. In the process, I'm damaging them. But even if I shoot a high double where I'm not actually committing to dropping my knee, like freestyle style, a freestyle double leg, typically your knee will hit. But if I just kind of lower my base and shoot in, I'm still lowering my base. These guys are just managing to slam each other onto the ground without overcommitting to sacrificing their ability to stay on their feet or stay on top at least, no matter what happens. So it's not that they're not committal. You see, he's really going for the takedown. He went so hard for the takedown that he actually got taken down. But they're not committing to dropping their body so low that you could just sprawl on top of them. And that's a nice thing to see. Again, I think this has a lot of reality-based application. And it has a tremendous history. It's proven itself. I mean, if Genghis Khan made his people do this, his warriors do this, and it's good enough for me, I'll tell you that much. So there you go. I think we'll watch another, minute or so of this, and then I'll wrap up with my final comments. And I'll give you my pros and cons. Let's turn on the volume and see what it sounds like. Okay, that got interesting. The music was quite unique there. Was not what I was expecting. But again, you'll see 90% foot sweeps is what results in this thing taken down. I think they're the best I've seen at foot sweeping. Okay, so here's my final notes. Final notes, Mongolian wrestling. Well, I love it. I love it. It's obvious I love it. I love all wrestling styles, but especially this one. It's, again, something that's hard to find outside of key areas of the world where it's incredibly popular. So the National Nadam Festival, I believe in, I don't know where it was held, but it had the highest amount of wrestlers ever to attend an event. Over 6,000 attended, Mongolian wrestlers. So it's a big style. There's obviously people who compete in it, and it's got a lot of cultural significance. It's got a lot of historical significance. And I always talk about that. I always talk about some of what I like in martial arts is also their cultural and historical significance. Not everything's about fighting always. But this style would make you an incredibly effective fighter, so it's giving you that too. So I really don't have anything negative to say. The only thing I might traditional garb does not necessarily reflect real grips that you might have in a street fight. Like this, you won't, it'll just rip. You won't whip me around from here, it'll just rip. So sometimes I do feel like, depending on your location in the world, if it's very hot, right, you're not going to have those grips. So if you're training judo in a place where it's 80 degrees all year, you're not going to be able to follow those same grips in the street. So it's important to also know how to use overhooks, underhooks, and collar ties. Do I think that these guys could take someone down regardless of the type of grips that they had? Absolutely. So it's a minor criticism. These guys are beasts. They're amazing. And I have friends that have wrestled with some Mongolian wrestlers, and they tell me, they're like, these guys are some of the best wrestlers I've ever felt. I'd love to find a video of the Dagestani guys wrestling with some Mongolian guys, because that would be amazing. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. Please like and subscribe. And that's all I got to say for today.